I've been asked a ton of times how to relic farm in IS-5. Apparently my previous explanation of get Fangs of Hatred and farm emergency stages wasn't satisfactory. So now I'm gonna say the same thing, but I'm gonna use more words. Take the Blueprint squad at the start. While it's the most broken squad in IS-5, I want to be clear about something. Blueprint is not necessary for this strategy. You can pick any squad you want, like tactical support if you want to start with a 6-star, and you can still farm out enough items to break the game without relying on Blueprint. What Blueprint does is make this strategy consistent. The second key piece of equipment you need is the Fangs of Hatred. This is an item that can be found in an encounter on floor 1 or 2. The encounter has the highest spawn chance, so for most of your runs it will be the first encounter you see. The Doodle of Hope also has its uses if you want to finish quickly, as it lets you skip fights by turning them into safe houses. But if you want to see what real power creep is, Fangs is the way to go. Now that you have Fangs, most rerolls will give you an emergency stage. Usually you only have 1 or 2 emergency fights per floor. They're far more dangerous than a normal stage, but give you an item in return. But what would happen if every normal fight and every encounter was replaced with an emergency? Most normal fights won't give you an item. Most encounters don't give you items, so you end up with far more relics than you would usually have. All the extra relics you gather up outscale the increased difficulty from emergencies, to the point that fights become easier than the normal ones would have been otherwise. So the goal is to avoid normal fights, but there are some other nodes that are better than an emergency. Let's go over the relative value of nodes. Normal fights and encounters on lower floors are much lower value than emergencies, so just turn them into emergencies. Encounters on floor 4, 5 or 6 can be much more valuable than an emergency. They have some unique items, most of them just turn into an emergency fight, but some of them can give you multiple items. 2 encounters in particular give you 4 items, more than you can ever get from an emergency. Wish nodes are close to value in emergencies. You get ingots, thoughts and plants from emergencies, but the wish lets you pick the better of 2 items. I'd say an average emergency gives you more value, but they're close in practice. Most of the time I'd go with the emergencies just so I can stack up on more plants. You can always use up all of your plants no matter how many you stack up, so I try to avoid skipping them. Face-off nodes are just an emergency node with 0 risk. The only downside compared to an emergency is that you can't get any plants from them, but you can't lose any lives either, so if you're low on power just take the face-off node, or if you want to for fun. Missing one or 2 plants isn't game ending after all, especially with a power strategy like this. Safe houses are a bit more complicated. They can't give you relics, so usually they give lower value, but they have other useful things. Like if you have some very nasty buff like deployment limit, you can remove it at a safe house. You can eat with some 6-star, or get some extra plants that may be more helpful to you than a random relic. However, safe houses are a bit RNG, and it's possible to get completely useless options. I usually reroll them into emergencies, unless I need the plants from them. Finally, we have shops and boskies. Since you're power farming, you'll have a ton of ingot to buy out the entire shop, and the bosky is just 3 emergency nodes in one. Both are extremely high value and should be prioritized over anything else when pathing. Speaking of pathing, you need to remember that moving vertically is always better than moving horizontally. Every vertical movement is 1 extra node that you have before the end of the floor. This is the true reason the reroll squad is so strong. IS-5 has a ton of vertical paths, and saving the rocks from rerolls lets you take more vertical paths, drastically increasing the total number of nodes you go through. Of course, you should still consider the relative value of the nodes around you. A bosky gives you 2 extra nodes, a vertical path gives you 1 extra node. It's not worth taking the vertical path if it means skipping a bosky. At the start of every floor, plan out your path so that you eat as many nodes as possible to maximize the number of relics you can get. Finally, make sure to farm out the plants on every stage. Always break the yellow crystals for every stage. Sometimes it's even worth losing life for it. You can never have enough plants, there's always some opportunity to use them. Whether it's by upgrading shops, safe houses and crafting benches, or by just spending them on vertical paths and boskies. That's the main stuff. Here are a couple extras. Ending 3 gives you a bosky with 2 extra fight. Technically it results in 4 items, but only 2 of them actually buff you. Remember End of Times? That item that saved your run if you died? In IS-5 it's one of the best items in the game. Instead of just spitting you out on the next stage with no reward, it now gives you a boss key with a guaranteed shop in it. 4 nodes, and one of them being a shop, makes it the best boss key in IS-5. On top of that, you don't need to lose all of your lives to activate it. You can simply enter a combat stage and then quit it out. The game treats that as losing the stage, end of time activates, and gives you a boss key without touching your lives. Finally, one of the lingering thoughts replicates itself when you carry it to a new floor. If you have enough carry capacity, you can save them up for a few floors and get stupid things like this. And that's how you get 100 items in IS-5 consistently. The only downside is that all the extra fight makes the run take an hour and a half. But if you want to rush through, the Doodle of Hope lets you skip all the fights and go straight to the boss. That's it for this one. I'll make a few more videos covering questions I frequently get.